Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show that won't be on Monday this week. I just got back from TwitchCon in San Diego, and I've been spending the whole day dealing with my cat, who you'll probably hear fairly frequently in the video. Not that that's a problem, but the boarding place was only feeding him half of the food they were supposed to the entire 5 or 6 days he was there, and I am not a happy camper, and neither is he. So he's been very affectionate now that he's home, and thus I think he understands I'm recording a video though, because he just walked out and he was like nonstop bothering me, and I said I was just going to start the recording anyway. So I'm back from TwitchCon. I'm feeling much more reinvigorated, at least to do some basic stuff on YouTube. We've been on kind of like a mental checkout month. I'm sure you've seen me talk about it in some of the previous Mondays with Mr. Happy, and I'm feeling a lot better. I was feeling like I was going to make a video Tuesday, Wednesday. I was like, let me get myself through TwitchCon, and then we'll see what we've got. Probably some really basic stuff hitting the channel this week on Final Fantasy XIV, but also, and I'm probably going to have to put a video out separately about all this stuff. State of the Realm won't be this week. Sly is jury duty, or at least he may have jury duty when he gets back on State of the Realm Day. It's fine. There's not really any news to talk about this week anyway when it comes to that. So it should work out, but we'll probably put out a few basic thoughts videos. I might throw a few Borderlands videos because that's been my obsession for the past, 2 weeks now. A little bit like 2.5 weeks, I guess, not including the time I was away at TwitchCon. So be on the lookout for some of that stuff coming this week. And of course, as we gear up for 5.1, expect more content to be hitting the channel after our September breakathon, I guess I'll call it. But of course, we have to do as we usually do and thank the Patreon sponsors who've been supporting through this dull month for me here on the YouTube channel. It's very much appreciated whenever we have months like that and they still decide to come by. And of course, those of you who come by to ask the questions every week, we have the Patreon list going in the top left. And I think as I'm recording this, I think I need to add or adjust a name on there because I remember seeing an email while I was at TwitchCon. And of course, our Patrons of Darkness, Khuja, Jenova, and Kurenai Oni, who have been massive supporters throughout the years. And I very much appreciate them because they're doing like a lot. That's why they get that special shout out. And I haven't had a whole lot going on, but they've been very understanding in email and in Twitch chat. So thank you to everyone for watching. Let's get into this. I can't imagine there's that many questions from last week, but I haven't checked yet, so let's get started. All right, question number 1, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, Listening to you being upset about mentors, do you think the mentor title crown should be given to those who have cleared all the current content and it resets with every new savage rate that's added to the game? So I think mentor systems in general are just really tough to do. You need to make it so that the people who actually want to do it are the ones doing it and not the people who have no interest in actually participating in the system. That's really tough. That's tough in like any system in life. There's always people trying to game something for personal gain. You can't just make it someone who's like cleared all PvE content. You can't make it so it's just someone who's cleared like a bunch of PvP content. Just a lot of the time, someone who's good at something doesn't necessarily make a good teacher. Those of you who maybe, have gone to college and had those professors that are they're like researchers for the college, but they're terrible teachers. They just got their teaching certification so that they could do, double the work and do basic and stay at the same college. It's kind of like that, where just because someone's cleared content doesn't make them a good mentor. And yeah, and that's not to say, of course, they could clear that content, but then you can't make the bar that high because the information that you glean from that kind of stuff is a lot of the time several-fold over what a mentor is trying to teach. I love that the roulette, when people participate in it and the mentors are actually trying to get people through. I can't stand when a mentor goes into a mentor roulette and they get an extreme primal and they get upset at the wiping. It's like, that's the whole reason you're there. It's understanding to get frustrated at someone who has absolutely no inclination to learn, but there's just so many, facets to this that I'm of the opinion it's almost impossible to do a proper system. What we have now is actually probably the lesser of the two evils, but I do wish there was, I wish I had a suggestion, because not having no suggestions makes my opinion nearly worthless in this case. I wish I had some sort of suggestion on how they could improve it, how they could make it through. And outside of making somebody take like a written exam, which nobody wants to do, I'm not really sure how they could go through like actually quality checking mentors. All right, next one, hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hey, Happy, how are you? A little tired. I actually, when I got back from the convention, it was a little earlier because Aloha was throwing such a huge fit. I laid down to help him pass out, nap a little bit, and I passed the hell out. I barely slept at all this weekend. The beds at the Westin were just, couldn't stand it. My back is still killing me. So that's how I am. Hopefully you're doing better. It's probably a very dumb question. I'm sorry in advance if you have covered this in the past. Dude, half the questions I've answered in the past. That's fine. But what is potency? More importantly, how is it worked out and what is one potency worth? So I don't think that's a dumb question. I think it's a question that's actually way above what prepared for. Potency is one of the elements that goes into the damage calculation for an ability. So general thing is the higher the potency, the more damaging the attack will be. Now that's before factoring in the multipliers that come from your main stat, critical hit rate, direct hit rate, determination. Consider it like a baseline through which the base damage is calculated, and then all the other stats are added or multiplied on top of that. So I don't have an exact answer, like what is one potency worth? I couldn't tell you that because I don't know the calculation off the top of my head. But yeah, it's just a piece of the damage calculation or the healing calculation. I guess you should say the output calculation for any action in which potency is relevant. Next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey Haps, how you doing? You doing alright? I'm doing alright. I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Just had a random thought. Do you think the Grand Cosmos is that area in that fan crit is running through with Minfilia under Yulmore in the opening video of Shadowbringers? So my first thought was the moon because I really want to go there. But yeah, after analyzing it a bit more, I think it's most likely in Yulmore. I feel like that was one of the thoughts that went through my head, that it might be that area under there. What we see in that doesn't really look like the Grand Cosmos, but there's clearly portions of Yulmore that we haven't seen, and it's very likely that this dungeon is taking place there. When I think of the Grand Cosmos, though, if it's not something as outlandish as the moon itself, I can't help but think it's probably an observatory that's in Yulmore, accessible through maybe the elevator. That's not to say that it couldn't be like out on an island nearby and that Yulmore has the underground caverns actually attached to it where the dungeons are. There's all sorts of possibilities, but at the very least, we'll agree that it's Yulmore. I don't think it's exactly where we saw them running through, but it might connect to the Grand Cosmos. Next one, hashtag, I almost said mashtag, Mrhappy. That's what I almost, okay, let's just skip the hashtag reading this time. Hey, Mrhappy, what about ye? That's Northern Irish for how you doing. I about ye fine, ye. I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. One thing I still can't get my head around is what happened to the Warrior of Darkness. So I guess this is probably going to qualify as a spoiler question. So I haven't actually done that in a while. Most of the time I've just been answering questions. But since it's somewhat recent, not everyone watches probably finished Shadowbringers at this point. So I'm gonna scroll up something to talk about. We got the King's Avatars Chinese anime thing. I'm gonna close it actually like this. We haven't done this in a while. Some of you might not be familiar with this. I'm gonna do a thumbs up now. And when I do the thumbs up again, it means the spoiler's done. Okay? So 3, 2, 1, finishing the question. One thing I can't get my head around is what happened to the Warrior of Darkness to prevent the light from taking over them before fighting Emet-Selch. Did Ardbert do something to absorb the light from us and manifest it as an axe that we were used to defeat? Yes, or am I off the mark? No, it's quite simply that our I guess our threshold for the amount of ether we could store just went up by essentially rejoining with another Warrior of Light. Up to this point, there's a lot of speculation about, if we are actually a being that has been rejoined several times, hence our capacity to actually act as this ether battery in a sense that we actually are. Or if there's some other thing at play, but most people seem to accept that the idea is that we are probably rejoined multiple times. We essentially just did another rejoining with the Warrior of Darkness, and thus our threshold for containing the ether probably goes up in that manner. Now, manifesting it as the axe is a whole nother story. How we manage that is just, that's just like the anime power up, like moment of truth style writing, I suppose. But I doubt it's any more complicated than that. Just, this overwhelming darkness, we like reach inside like ether. It's not the first time we've channeled a lot of ether into something and bam, we got them. So, that's my bet at the very least. And, yeah, it's pretty simple. Oh, thumbs up. Almost forgot to do it because I haven't done it in so long. Hey. Next question, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Got that one right. Hi, Mr. Happy. I hope you're starting to feel a little better. Even if you're not, you got a ton of people pulling for you. I'm doing better. It's been great. The little bit of break in September definitely helped a lot. And TwitchCon definitely, like I said, a bit reinvigorating. So thank you. I have a couple of questions, actually. One, do you think they'll ever add a market board inside your house? Why or why not? Never. The amount of data that would need to be generated inside of an individual's instance and the potential number of instances that would then be able to generate it simultaneously would probably lead to the servers crashing any number of times. So I'm going to go ahead and give a big nope on that one for that very simple reason, just based on previous explanations they gave us. And two, a variation on a previously asked question. Some people have mentioned wanting to be able to access all of their inventory without having to take items off retainers individually for, say, crafting. The reason why not is because of how much it would bog down the servers. Totally understand that. It's kind of similar to my answer before, and I'm assuming it'll be similar to my answer by the time I'm done reading this. Is what to do with a potential fix that the guy for that problem. Why don't they simply make a separate space for crafters to go, like airship, subroom, and housing for crafting. That way the servers only load that much stuff from the character, goes into that space, and it reduces all the other stuff a person would be seeing in an open area. See many crafters talk about wanting a space where they could just sit down and craft without having to run to a market board and then a summoning bell and then an NPC. Well, most of those things are all right next to each other in any of the locations, so I don't know how much of an actual problem that is. It'll be a pretty big portion of the community would appreciate. Well, first of all, we have to see how accessible crafting stuff is in Ishgard, but it's not like you just magically, if you needed to go to the market board, no matter what you need to go to the market board, answering the previous question, they can't just give you free reign of a market board to access in your crafting menu. And it's not so much about what they could do to change it. It's about the way it already is. The way that retainers actually store data is that they do not call upon that data. There's not like this infinite number of retainers that's like constantly storing and producing data when you're not interacting with them. The problem is that when a player interacts with them, all that data is loaded at once. Now, putting it in a separate instance doesn't necessarily change the fact that that is still happening and still needs to happen multiple times over across the rest of the world. It's just because of the sheer amount of data that needs to go into it. So there's no simple way to fix it. You'd essentially need to rewrite the entire way that retainers work. And even that probably wouldn't really solve the issue because the game saves data, client side every 15 seconds when the industry standard is 30 seconds, plus the sheer amount of items and code that go into it, plus probably some of the technical debt left over from 1.0, probably leads to a big number of issues when trying to accomplish something like this. Also, further segregating players to an area that is specifically designated for crafting also kills some of the world vibe. It is always nice to go into Yulmore and Crystarium and be able to see these players and characters doing this very, what some may consider mundane, but so essential activity to the economy of Final Fantasy XIV, and removing them and separating them off to another segment of the world. I mean, we'll have to see how it feels with Ishgard, but that definitely does, I feel, more harm than good in the overall scheme of the way the MMO probably wants to function on both a technical and social standpoint. Next question, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, hashtag first time asker. Clear way to see it. Lollyho, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You lollyhoing? I'm lollyhoing. Medium-ish time viewer, first time asker. So have a first time bonus of a duty finder tank. Remembering arm's length is a cooldown. Vital thing. Okay, I have a two-part question regarding Samurai and the dev team's design philosophy of wanting it to be something for the benefit that benefits from receiving raid buffs rather than giving out any. I'd like to say, as a reminder, I do not speak for the dev team. This will probably be an opinionated answer that really has no bearing on the actual game or anything they could do to adjust it or change it. So I'm just going to say that ahead. I'm probably not going to be satisfied with my own answer on this, so I don't know if you will be. With 5.1 rebalancing, I've been milling over how they might fix melee DPS, put Samurai in a good spot. I mean, the bottom line is they just need to be the highest DPS, personal DPS output. Monk and Dragoon should be nowhere near it, is the main concern. And Ninja shouldn't be where it is regarded compared to Samurai either, if they wanted to actually meet the class fantasy of it being a melee black mage, in a sense. I'd like to know your specific thoughts on the idea of Samurai being able to use an ability that increases effectiveness or extends the duration of certain buffs they've received. So odds are that would probably lead to, I guess it largely depends on the balancing of the matter, but you always have to factor in how a job actually interacts with the timing of all the other jobs. Because there are some things, obviously, like Trick Attack that can't be extended. But then if you have a ninja, all of a sudden you're trying to think of how these extensions interact with Trick Attack. Trick Attack's always been this kind of center point of things. Then you have to consider the individual calculations of which buffs you have during which time frames. Is it a 1 minute cooldown, 90-second cooldown, 120-second cooldown, 150-second cooldown, 3-minute cooldown? What does it line up with on those 3-minute marks? Is everything lining up for those 3-minute marks? Is some stuff being left out of the 3-minute mark? Are there buffs? Does your group have an adequate number of raid buffs? Then if you don't have enough raid buffs in your actual group, is this ability even worth it? These are all elements that kind of go into it. I think with Astro having the ability removed, I think they want everything to be relatively regulated in regards to how long a burst window on average is expected to last for any given number of jobs or any given phase of the fight. And so for that, I have to think that since they removed that ability to extend buffs from Astro, that they're probably trying to regulate all that stuff, and thus it probably doesn't fit the ideal of a samurai much better, just because they are trying to pull the most out of receiving buffs from other people. And then you could then argue Black Mage would be in a very similar boat, but Black Mage is actually an incredibly strong job without needing to go down that road. I just think they've overbuffed too many jobs, is really the only thing that you need to look at for Samurai. They don't need to give it this, I guess, additional identity of extending buffs that they're given. Not that that wouldn't be cool, because it'd be nice to have a job that does something that, you know, not everything else does, and that would definitely make it stand out. But I don't think it's the core issue behind the design, because now then, once you do that, now you have to consider how every other buff interacts with Samurai, not even just from a time frame perspective, but from a balance perspective. Now, if Samurai is doing too much, you have to decide how much of it is really Samurai's fault and how much of it is really the job that's providing the buffs fault. Do they end up mismanaging some buffs and debuffs because of that? Yeah, there's issues that aren't really, I don't think are worth taking the risk for something like this. You should be in the dev team ever consider this approach to job design for Samurai and also for any other jobs. No, yeah, I think I pretty much covered that in the way I feel about that kind of change, is that it's fairly unlikely. The better idea is to get the actual job balance down correctly, instead of just making it so they leech even more off of other jobs buffs, because then if you're in a low raid buff category or anything like that, or if you had an Astro, there's so many different elements. I could go into a full discussion on it, but overall, I don't think it's worth making it part of Samurai's identity just for the sake of trying to make them stand above, when it's just a matter of the other melee jobs are way too strong compared to Samurai. It's not, I think Black Mage is too strong compared to the other casters, but I think that Samurai is too weak compared to the other melee, and that's the core issue. Next question, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Hap, since I made you skip a question last week, I don't even remember, dude. After TwitchCon, it's all blur. It's too much whiskey. I think I'll make you answer one that's easier. Okay. Out of all the current trust-compatible dungeons in 14, which one did you enjoy or didn't mind grinding the most? Malik as well definitely is the best of the trust grinding dungeons. It's the one that goes the fastest, the one that's least obtrusive. And it's the one that I personally feel that the trusts are least likely to screw up, or that you can screw it up the least for them. Only the last boss is really screw upable for your input by the way that you actually pull the boss. And it's usually not lethal. First boss can be a bit of a disaster with all the AoEs falling around if they don't have enough health, and they've lost health while they've been dodging just because of the sheer number of AoEs. But by the time I was done, because I did trusts before they were buffed, you know, and it's like 3 times the amount that it was before. And so I had to do a lot of trust dungeons, and Malik as well was the fastest one. And for me, that's a big, big thing. But I'd say the most fun one, though, isn't Malika's. That one's the fastest, but Katana Rabble is probably the most fun one. I learned a lot of speedrunning strategies throughout that fight, and certain things that you could do with the bosses and the actual trash towards the later part of the dungeon that I didn't know I could do, because I would never think to approach those areas that way. For example, the part at the very end where there's the 3 apes that jump down after you kill the first set of mobs, you can actually force them to jump down earlier by forcing them to throw an AoE at you and then walking out of range of them. Then they'll all jump down and you can do a big AoE pull there all at once. And so I was able to do that with the trust, and I was able to carry that knowledge into the normal, into like a normal party going into that dungeon. So with that information, that one was probably the most fun, but Malik as well was the fastest one to grind. Next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. First time commenting for State of the Realm, so hello, and I gift you with the Wind Up Elvan. I have one, but I thank you. I'll keep it short for you. If you could remove one thing from 14, what would you remove? I think I know what I'm going to say, but let me read the last 2 sentences. I would personally remove materia, as I find it's a hassle at times. It generally gives people another thing to argue about whether it's right or wrong. Now, materia is super easy. Like, when people screw that up, that's not a point of arguing. It's just people throwing like parry materia on, and it's like, you should take someone's advice and be like, hey man, just so you know, parry kind of sucks. To be like, no. That's, for me, what the point you've given is more so that just because if somebody can screw something up, they will. It doesn't matter if we wanted to remove everything people could screw up, then this would be like like just drawing stick figures the game, because there's always some element of knowledge or mastery to every part, and it's an RPG at the end of the day. If I can remove one thing, it'd be the fucking mentors. I was so ready to say that after the last couple of questions these last few weeks. So, yeah, dude, I just don't care for the mentor system. I just don't. I don't want to do the same explanation I did before, but it's just that's my answer. Next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Wow, it's been a while, like over a year. Welcome. So I'm back a little bit, and if you joining me for the first time, so actual question. What content would you show a friend to be like, this is the glory of 14? Oh, God. So every part of my soul wants to say ultimate. Or like A8 Savage or A3 Savage. But that's all rating, and that's not necessarily glory for a lot of people. And unfortunately, my second answer is the Shadowbringers story. But if you're getting them into it, that's the last thing you want to show them. Oh, man. You know, honestly, the glory of 14. So if we're looking at just like an ultimate hype piece, either the Shadowbringers trailer or the original A Realm Reborn trailer with Bahamut, I'd say those speak volumes about the game, even if you aren't entirely sure of the history of what led to those events. They're just such great cinematic and you know, technical and you know, audio marvels that you can't help but just feel like it's something you need to know more about. That's how I feel at the very least. Content-wise, I have to say Ultimate. You could probably swing by with some of the primals. It depends on if the person's like nostalgic for a specific Final Fantasy game or they know nothing about Final Fantasy altogether. If they're nostalgic, you might want to go with Thornton, for example. If they're not, then you might want to go with something a little bit more flashy, like maybe a Shinryu or a Byakuya or a Sephiroth or something like that. So, but some sort of content. Don't show them like Sastasha. Don't. So, this is the glory. I have 3 abilities, and these bats die very quickly. Oh no, I opened the blue coral, and I got poisoned. Oh no. And what instances make for good mechanic practices? The whole game kind of just teaches you as you go up. A lot of people will probably point to Bardam's Medal. But I mean, you even have like the Novice Hall at the early levels. That is a very basic principle instance to teach you the most basic things about Final Fantasy 14. So that's definite. Excuse me, I had to burp there. Those are definitely some of the easier ones, but I'm sure most people in the comment section would probably point to Bardam's Medal in regards to very basic mechanic teaching, even if it is a level 65 instance. All right, next question, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps, how are ya? I'm doing all right. Hopefully you're doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. So last month you answered the first part of my question. Thanks, by the way. So I wanted to ask it again. Okay, I'm cool with that. I don't remember what it was. One, what do you think of White Mage replacing Fluid Aura with an AoE water spell splash that evolves into Holy? Doesn't really make sense, because Fluid Aura doesn't exist. Listen, I agree with you. Fluid Aura doesn't exist for any good reason right now. I don't know why they left it in the game, especially after removing the knockback from it. But in regards to the actual design choices of Fluid Aura, it doesn't really match what Holy is. It's not meant to be damaging at all. It's meant to be a get the hell away from me button, essentially. So that's well, now it's not even that anymore. Now it's just the bind, because they got rid of all the knockbacks. Yeah, it's more of like a self peel, like the tank is screwing something up and I need to protect myself in some way button. But I'm gonna be honest, you know, nobody uses it for that reason. Nobody's like, oh yeah. There's like whenever there's those like rare occurrences where you can use like a bind or a heavy effect and you actually look really smart for using it, then you're like, ah yeah. Or maybe when like Eureka comes around, Fluid Aura is probably going to be great in Eureka for any various number of reasons, whether it be, I guess I say when Eureka comes back around. I should say when exploration content comes back around. We're done with Eureka, but exploration content, we'll be getting more of that. Then it's incredibly useful. I find myself using those kind of tools all the time, especially if you ever have more than one monster. Things like Repose and Fluid Aura, even just traversing throughout exploration zones before you have your mount, I find those tools invaluable. So it might just be that they have them for like that basic content. They decided to keep them for that reason. But no, yeah, the overall design choice between Fluid Aura does not match the design choice behind Holy at all. So you can't just evolve it into it just because, you know, you want to, I suppose. 2, what's your thoughts on White Mage being less elemental and more light-based, but Black Mage still being elemental-based and is getting dark spells? So I'm assuming you're referring to like Xenoglossy and Foul and whatnot. I think it just very much goes into the actual roles that the jobs are playing. White Mage, you know, their offensive abilities are their elemental skills. You know, that's what their stone was before this expansion. That's what their arrow was before this expansion. But everything else, all their light-based magic, all their umbral-based magic, since, you know, we're going off the knowledge we have Shadowbringers, is all light-based. So it kind of just makes sense that everything eventually works its way into being light-based. Whereas Black Mage is very much about this very delicate balance between going between their astral and their umbral forms, and, you know, generating mana and then stalling it but using its sheer force. So you can't just make all of those suddenly dark-based spells, because there's only one aspect. You know, that's why there's astral fire and umbral ice, because they represent. You can't have astral darkness and umbral darkness. It doesn't work. You know, darkness is naturally astrally aspected. So that's those. I'd imagine those are the reasons. It's just what I said. So let's move on. Next question, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Hope you're having an amazing week. You know, I'm sorry to interrupt your question, but Aloha really did just, like, as soon as I started talking, it's like he understood I was working, which never happens. He's going to come in here in like 30 seconds now that I said that. Anyway, long-time watcher, first-time asker, got a question for you. Alright. In a previous video, I remember you discussing how people sometimes just don't give a crap in expert dungeons. How'd you feel about them adding something like how WoW made you complete Mr. Pandaria challenge mode in order to unlock heroic dungeons, i.e. a Hall of Novice-like thing? I feel like this would at least weed out the scrubs who don't care enough to learn what an interrupt is. Thanks for everything you do, you rock. So I'm totally for anything that would improve player skill being integrated into the game. Obviously, I've in the past mentioned how it's really hard for them to make like a teach you a rotation kind of thing, but something that kind of at least warrants you going through that process sometimes helps. But if there's anything I've learned from World of Warcraft as well, is that sometimes people just get good enough to finish a challenge and then immediately go back to fucking off in their head. It's one of those things that there's no reason for you not to do it, because people will have an extra piece of content to get through. It will, at least to some degree, those who maybe don't quite understand that they maybe need to improve, it gives them that little heads up that, hey, you know, if I can't access this thing because I can't beat this yet, then, you know, clearly I need to work on something. You know, it at least puts the thought in their head. But some people literally look at the challenge in front of them, and once they get through it, they don't apply any of the knowledge they've just learned and apply it. They don't take anything that they've just learned and apply it to the next thing. We see that a lot when you're leveling throughout the game. You pick up new skills, you have these new rotations, class quests, job quests, all these things that are to some degree trying to let you know that you need to perform on a certain level. You have this new action or anything at all, and people just don't pay attention to it. They get through it in whatever method is the easiest for them, whether it's someone telling them exactly what to do without them actually trying to retain said knowledge, or just actually going out of their way and being like, okay, I need to get better. I need to improve and play better. It's just, I want what you've suggested. I'm not against it. I don't think it'll help expert dungeons that much. It'll help a little bit, but not that much. Just people, man. Just people. Man. Alright, I see the hashtag third time's the charm, so I'm going to take this one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, repeat question, third time's the charm. Hello, Mr. Happy, how are you today? First, I'd like to say thank you for answering my question a few weeks ago. Oh, so you asked the question, but then you tried asking another one. So I see it's a story-related one, so we'll do the same spoiler thing that we did earlier. I really got to get back in the habit of doing this, because there are definitely people who tune in who don't want to hear ending-related things for Shadowbringers. So thumbs up again. When I do the thumbs up, I promise I'll remember. That is when the spoilers are over. So 3, 2, 1, reading the question now. As for my question, it's more of a speculation one. You know, okay, I'll tell you that. That's a big reason why. When you lead with that, it definitely draws me away from it, because I guess I don't really find my speculation any more valuable than anyone else's. So answering things that are more fundamental generally take priority when I'm trying to squish this into like 30 minutes-ish. So that's probably why, just for a heads up in the future, that it took this time, because I don't remember the rest of this question, having already read it. What are your thoughts on how us, the Warrior of Light, are going to help bring the Scions back to the source? Also, you think Varys is really dead, or did Justinian Gaius get him out and saved him? I think he's dead. I don't think there's a Varys that survives, but it's not that it's not possible. It's just not my personal thought. And as for Warrior of Light bringing the Scions back, I mean, I have a feeling it's just going to be the same magic that brought them here will just reverse it. Either that or that motherfucker's going to die, the Crystal Exarch, and then they'll go back like he originally planned. One of those two things, or we're going to lose some of the Scions finally, but lost a few in the past, but I don't know about any of these 6. I don't know if they're really ready to kill off any of the main ones that we interacted with this expansion. Spoilers are done now, see? Told you I'd remember. Alright, and it looks like to wrap things up here at the end, we have one last little barrage of questions. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, Haps. How you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Here's some non-Final Fantasy XIV questions. Ooh, excellent. What is your dream car, and why is it the Regalia? What? No, I don't even have a license, dude. I could go into why I don't have a license. Not like it's anything bad. I just gave mine back to the state of New Jersey because their insurance laws are, well, somewhat reasonable, but expensive. And, yeah, so I don't even have a dream car. Whatever my Lyft is picking me up in, that's my dream car. Whatever gets me from A to B. Apple or Android? I'm kind of impartial. I don't really care. I don't use my phone for a lot of things. I use it to call and, like, Twitter. And, like, as an authenticator. Like, so, oh, there's Aloha. Now he's coming in towards the end. So, yeah, I don't really care that much. If you like to, like, mess around and, like, root your shit, then go Android. Otherwise, fuck it. Apple's basic, easy to understand. Everyone's used one at some point or had a friend they made fun of for using one at the very least. Coke, Pepsi. Coca-Cola is the easy choice for me. I don't know why. Pepsi just doesn't sing to me. What was your dream job as a 5-year-old? You know, I actually have a very specific answer because in my preschool actually did like a yearbook. We were only in the preschool for 1 year, but they gave us a yearbook and I put secret agent. So that was my dream job as a 5-year-old, was secret agent. And how do you like your coffee? Black. No cream, no sugar, unless I'm traveling. And you know what, if I'm traveling and I have to get like Starbucks or something, I will not drink their coffee black. It's not good. No, it's just not. I need the cream and sugar to not want to vomit. Sorry for the Starbucks drinkers. It just doesn't work for me. But those are all the questions there. So have a great day. You have a great day as well. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Aloha came and like nibbled at the food in his bowl, and now he's sitting in the hallway licking his chops. All right. Thank you for everyone watching this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And if you have a question, be sure to ask for next week's episode. Next week's episode will be back to being, on Mondays. Again, this one was just kind of the happening of, not coming back from TwitchCon until the Monday and being busy on the Sunday before, to the point where it's kind of difficult to make time to actually record said video. But anyway, look out for some actual, just very, very basic stuff. I'm going to ease my way back into the content creation this week and do some very basic thoughts videos that I've had. Kind of just gestating for a little bit, especially with the extra time from not doing State of the Realm this week. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. Thank you again to our patrons. Thank you again to all of you who tune in every week, even when I'm not doing much else on the channel. And I will see all of you for next week's episode. Until then, take care.